Here today. Thank those that are online listening as well. We hope we can get this information out to as many people as possible. I also want to thank our broadcasting class from the high school. They're making it possible to go out and stream this, and they promised to make me look really good. So I appreciate that. But again, thanks for being here. As you are probably well aware, last year at this time, actually I think it was the exact same date we started these meetings. And we loved that experience so much that we decided to do it again this year. But no, we appreciate, since that time, we've met with patrons, we've met with teachers, we've met with administrators, and we've really tried to dig into what can we do that meets the needs of the district and also that the community can support. And I feel like through a lot of meetings and a lot of work with the board, we've been able to come with a proposal that will meet those needs. And so we want to share that. The process we'll go through, I'll share a little bit about the proposal. Bryce Bronson, our business manager, will talk about the financial end of it. And then at the end, we'll take any questions that you have. So if you have questions, hold those, and at the end, we're more than happy to take any questions. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to give a little history, and if you're at our meetings last year, you probably remember a similar slide to this. But this is our historical enrollment from the district, and then 9-12 as well. And if you can look, our biggest concern right now is a 9 through 12 population. So if you look at that, 10 years ago, we were at just under 1,300, and now we're actually over 2,100 now. So we've gained 800 students in that. So obviously that creates some pressure on our system, on our facilities, and then district-wide, similar growth. We're actually up over 6,700 students now. So as we look forward, over the past 10 years, our average growth has been around 3% a year, 3 to 4%. We had one year that got up close to 6%, and then some that were slightly below, but that's average. If you look at the numbers last year, predicting a 3% growth would have put us at 67-63. We surpassed that 68-17, so we're right in that range, 3.5 to 4% growth again last year. And if we project that out, you can see that obviously that grows very quickly even at that 3% growth. 3%, 4% doesn't sound like a lot until you run the numbers on over 7,000 students, or 6,700 students. And then that number is big, especially knowing we've got to have places for every one of those students every day. And so this plan is meant to meet this need and into the future as well. So what are the projects we're looking at? The first would be to build a new middle school. And the new middle school, we own property on 200 and 4100. So it's down from Cottonwood Elementary and then south of South Fork Elementary. And this whole property here, the district owns that. So we propose putting a new middle school there. And the estimated cost for that is $63 million. We understand that's a big number. We understand that number continues to rise. But that's what it is, and that would be the first proposed project. Then we would take the existing Rigby Middle School, and we would take a portion of that, and we would create more career technical opportunities for our students. Facilities where they can get in, learn a trade, get a foot up on going to college if they're interested in some of those. And that would be an expansion of some of our programs and introducing new programs as well. When we get to that point, we will, or as we get to that point, be working with our students and community, see what do we really need. Some ideas that we've had is to add a dental assistant program, to move our CNA program, we have that, the nursing assistance program, out into a facility that really meets its needs, to add an EMT, fire, cybersecurity, things along those lines. We have a great robotics program at the high school, but really they're in a traditional sized classroom that doesn't work for them. And so being able to create those opportunities. We would also anticipate some traditional courses being moved out there as well, and just moving some of those courses so kids can, if they're out there for one of these programs, they could stay out there for a math or an English as well. And this is estimated at about $5 million. Then we would add additional classrooms to Farnsworth Middle. Currently, Rigby Middle School has roughly 1,000 students, just barely under, and Farnsworth Middle School has just over 600 students. So by adding capacity there, we could balance those numbers. That would take changing some boundaries and realigning some of those things, but we think that's important. And in addition to that, rather than just adding classroom space, we can add to that facility some things that it's missing that a new middle school would have. Some of those career technical courses, it doesn't have a family consumer science room, so we would add that, something for their ag department, and things along those lines as well. And that is roughly $7 million. So as you go to the polls and get your ballot, you're going to see a question for $75 million. That $75 million will be for these projects that we just discussed. And then a second question will be for $5 million, and that's in addition to Roberts Elementary, to add a gymnasium, set of bathrooms, as well as some updates to that facility. That's one of our oldest buildings, and to maintain its integrity, we need to make sure that we can provide some of those upgrades and updates. And so that one, again, will be a separate question, and it's $5 million price tag on that one. The question always comes, okay, so can there be one without the other? The answer is yes. They're not contingent on each other. So potentially, we could pass a bond for the Roberts Gym and not for the other projects, or vice versa. Both of those would need a supermajority, which is 66 2/3 plus 1 vote to pass. And again, both on their own merits. Okay, so that's kind of, in a nutshell, what that is. Some of the feedback that we got going through the process was, as a community, we need to know, what do you need? What classroom space do you have to have? We feel that that meets that, and that's one of the reasons that we pulled this out. We feel this is just as important as classroom space, but we also wanted to go to the community and say, okay, classroom space, this is what we have to have. This is something else we think that we have to have, especially for that community out at Roberts, but give them the option for both of those. All right, I'm going to invite, this is just a summary here. Same thing, $75 million for those first projects, and then $5 million for that. I'm going to have Bryce talk about the thing that is probably the hottest topic, and that's the financials and how does that impact taxes and things like that. So.
Good afternoon. My name's Bryce Bronson. I'm the business manager here at the district. So I get the fun question of, will this bond raise my taxes? That's probably the #1 question that we receive anytime the bond goes out. So from that question, usually there's 2 answers that are prevalent. The first answer you'll hear is, it won't affect my taxes. And then the second question you'll hear is, on the ballot, it says it has a cost of $156 per 100,000. So that'll be the cost. And so I'm going to talk about how both those things are correct and how they can coexist. So I'd like to start talking a little bit, go back in history, back when the high school was finished in 2014. At that time, the board met and came up with a taxing philosophy. And that taxing philosophy was a level levy rate. And at that time, it was $427 per 100,000. And they decided that amount is what they needed to fund their current debt obligations. Now, part of that strategy, as the county grew, and they knew there was going to be growth, that growth would bring in more tax revenue using that same levy rate. The more people that pay that rate, the more tax revenue that came in. And that would fund future capital projects. And that did. In 2018, we funded the Cottonwood Elementary using that same level levy rate of $427. That's good when there's just growth of new people coming in and normal assessed value rates on houses increasing. But as we've seen lately, assessed values for homes have went up immensely. And so that philosophy becomes kind of problematic, because as the super jump in assessed values means you take in more revenue than you want. You don't need that. And so the board met this last summer and talked about different taxing philosophies. And so the philosophy they came up with is having a level levy amount. And so this red line here on this graph represents $7.5 million for a levy amount that we need to fund our bond debt obligations. So let me just explain this graph since it's probably small for you guys in the back. Each one of these lines represents a year, and then this goes up millions of dollars, up to 7.5 million. So as you can see, this is 2023. There's 4 different colors here representing different series of bonds. Now currently there are 2 bonds outstanding in the district. There's the high school bond representing the yellow, the blue, and the gray, and then the Cottonwood represented with the red bars. Now the reason why you see so many lines in your tax bill for the high school is because at the time the high school bond was done, it was broke up into 4 series of bonds. And we did that to take advantage of different federal programs at the time. Some federal programs paid all the interest on the bond or reduced the interest, but they had different amounts that you could put towards the bond. And so that is why it was broken up in different series. We've actually paid off 1 series of the high school with 3 remaining. Now those high school bonds will fall off in 25, 27, and 29, and then the Cottonwood bond will be done in 2037. So let's go back to this current year. So we have the current bonds here. You see there's a lot of extra space on there, 7.5 million. We currently paid off, well, in September of 2022, we paid off the South Fork bond. And so that is what a lot of this white space is. But this white space I like to call capacity. And that just means there's capacity there from our bond obligations, our debt obligations, to what we are levying for. There's capacity for an additional bond. And those green lines represent this proposed bond. So the proposed bond, this does both questions of $80 million. As you can see, the proposed payment is smaller bonds at the beginning, or smaller payments at the beginning, and increasing as these current bonds drop off. So when we say that it's not going to affect my taxes, what we're saying is with $7.5 million levied for bonds, we can fit this new proposed bond in. So basically we're saying with this question, will you allow us to keep that $7.5 million amount for 20 years? Now, the other question about the $156 per 100,000 that you'll see on the ballot, how does that come about? And so that is just basically an average of all these years of the green averaged out for the 20 years. So as you can see, this is less than 156, and at the end, the whole thing is the proposed bond. And so that's an average, but it does fit under the 7.5 million. And so that's how both of those answers can be correct. It won't affect your current tax amount. And in fact, as growth happens with this levy amount, as there's more people moving into the county and contributing to the 7.5 million, it's possible that your taxes could go down because there's more people putting in and participating in the levy. So, yes?
So, did you maybe mention the change in the levy?
Oh, yes. I was going to get this. So, as I said, our levy rate was $427. Right after Cottonwood, it went down slightly to $424. But this rate for this current year is $327. So we dropped it $100 per 100,000. Now, with having this level amount, we don't really look at the rate. That rate could go up, down, probably down as more people come in, as I say, with more people contributing to that amount. So that is where that came from. And the board is very cognitive of the increase in assessed values in houses. And so I think them dropping the levy rate just shows where they're looking for, but also planning for the future.
Thank you, Bryce. One question that we get a lot is, I can't remember the question I was going to ask now that we get a lot. Oh, the timing on the building projects. So if we were to pass a bond in March, break ground probably mid-June. It takes a couple months to get access to funds, get designs and everything. And then for the middle school, that's a 2-year process. The addition to Farnsworth would be about a 1-year process, and we may hold off on starting that so they finish roughly the same time. And then we really can't do anything with the existing middle school until we get those students out of there. So it would be 2 years before we could start on that as well. And then the Roberts Gym, I would most likely start as soon as possible, and that would be roughly a 1 year, less than 1 year project. The other question we get is, okay, what if this doesn't pass, do our taxes go down? Well, absolutely, at some point, yes, they would. If we didn't add any more debt, it wouldn't be an immediate thing. It'd probably be about 3 years down the road. They would go down. In full disclosure, they would. Obviously, if we're adding buildings, we have to pay for them somehow. But this is a way to keep that constant rather than, like Bryce has said, at that levy rate, because it's a percentage, as your values go up, you pay more as well. So, what questions do we have? Hard ones are for Bryce, easy ones are for me. Huh. Yes?
So, was it 156, the average that you
So it was 156 for the 75 million and then $10 for the 5 million. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So, are you saying that that is on top of what we're already paying, or that is?
That's built into what we're already paying. That's built into that 327. That's the green space here. So that's a good question.
Jen, would you just explain that? Because when they get their ballot, that's really hard to understand.
Yes.
Sorry. That's really hard to understand, and a lot of people think that's additional.
Right.
So if you can explain that we have to do that ballot legally and just a little bit about that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was some legislation that changed how we can write ballot questions. And on those, each question has to tell what that tax impact is. So on the first question, it will say $156 per $100,000 of taxable value. And so that's what this is, but that's built in to what we're already paying at that $327. So, and then the other question will say, is that one $10 per $100,000 of taxable value? But again, that's built into that. That's the green up there. But yes, it is confusing. It was, in a way, the thought process was to show more transparency and more, but ultimately it causes more confusion because it doesn't delineate that this is within that. It does. We did, on this ballot, try to explain that as much as we can, so it may be a little clearer, but yes, it's all built into that 7.5 million that we would take each year. So one way I like to think about this is, I think of my own mortgage, and these are my mortgage payments, and this is what I bring in. And so every year we have $7.5 million worth of payments that we will need to have with this new bond. And again, if that didn't pass in 3-4 years, yes, that would have to go down, that payment amount. Yes. Thanks for remembering the mic.
I hope you're ready.
Oh, I have been ready for months.
How is this bond different than the last, minus the field house?
So minus the field house, minus we had some money in there to buy other property. Is that the things we took out? Other than that, and the dollar amount's the same. Like, I totally get that.
The cost the same pretty much because of rising?
Yes.
Okay. How many more schools do you project needing to be bonded out in the next 10 years? We did 10 years ago built the brand new high school. Now we're going to add on to this with the questions from the live stream. How many more do you project with the growth rate?
So that's challenging because I don't know what the growth rate will be. Okay. I would project within 5 to 7 years, we would probably need to add an elementary school, and probably around that 10-year mark, we would start talking about a high school. But as you know, it's near impossible to project what that growth rate is. If that slows down, then we'd push that out. If we get back to that 5 to 6%, then it could expedite that as well.
And how long will the CTE center in the high school hold out before you have to build another high school?
Well, again, that goes back to how much growth do we see, and that's a determination we'd have to make at that time. So by adding the CTE center, we add capacity for enrollment at the high school. Right now, roughly 1,000, probably just over 1,000, but once we do renovations, it'll probably cut that down a little bit because we'll be creating some bigger rooms and things like that. But it would create a lot of capacity at the high school.
Okay. Obviously, Rigby High School has far too many students, and the problem needs to be resolved. But are you setting up the bond mostly to maintain the levy rate rather than focusing on the true needs? Because you're like building a middle school instead of focusing on, the problem is the high school. There are too many students at the high school.
Right. No, that's a good question. So when in 2018, we had a huge problem with the middle school. We had 1,500 students. It was the biggest middle school in the state. We built Cottonwood Elementary School and put Farnsworth back to a middle school to address the middle school need. So in a sense, it's very similar. We are building a middle school. That was originally built as a high school. It functions much better as a high school. And so, one, yes, we feel it is more fiscally responsible because a high school now we're looking at 110, 120 million just for that. But we also gain this CTE center for students and provide more opportunities for them so that in the future, whenever that is, if that's 10 years down the road or whatever, when we need another high school, we also continue to have a CTE center to serve all of our students in the district.
Okay. With the high school, if you build the CTE, high school staff feeling united and cohesiveness when there are so many teachers in one school, let alone so many teachers in one department, because I've talked to quite a few teachers and there is no cohesiveness.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't say none, but it is hard to have a cohesiveness at the high school when in your department you have over 20 teachers.
Yeah, no, and that's a challenge. I mean, that's a challenge with growth and with whether it's school, whether it's business, whatever it is, as you grow, there's challenges. So you do have to be very intentional with that. And there's different ways to do that. One thing we do at the middle schools is like a teaming approach where students are on teams. I've seen that done at the high school. Or academy approaches, and that's something that we've talked about. As students go into some of these CTE courses, let's say they go into a healthcare, then we could have that as academy where we have an English teacher, a math teacher that are tied to that, and so they have their smaller learning community group of kids that they're responsible for. Is that a fix-all for everything? No. We know there's a lot of students, and we know that that's got to be very intentional to do that. We try to address that with a lot of our professional learning communities that we do on Fridays now, and they get together as groups to plan and to look at data and to work together in those sense as well. But yeah, that is a challenge.
Okay, and how do you plan to help the students feel like their needs are being met when they are in a school with a massive amount of students and get lost in the crowds? Already we already had the middle school issues, but the high school's just going to get bigger and those kids just feel lost.
Right. No, and I think same answer to that, and that part of this CTE center can address some of that, because some of that is we can create those academies, those smaller learning communities. We've even talked about looking at the teaming concept at like the freshman level and along those lines. But yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, that's one of the benefits of smaller schools by far, and there's pros and cons to both.
Okay, and how will you address providing students with many opportunities to compete, whether it's drama or sports or whatever it is, when only one high school team is allowed? And in a school with over 2,000 students, only so many can be on the team.
Yeah, and that is a challenge and a concern. One of the advantages of a bigger school is there are more clubs, more opportunities that way. But yeah, if your passion is student council or basketball or cheerleading, that will limit some things, opportunities. That's just the reality of it. So
how come we can't save up and bond for a new high school? I know it's like way expensive, but instead of passing this bonds, why don't we save up for a high school?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one that we've obviously got a lot. We've talked through, and in talking to community, a couple different answers to that. One is we feel that in talking to community that we wouldn't be able to pass that. A lot of people like the one high school, we're Rigby, so that's one part of it. Also, I've heard our community described as a 5A high school in a 2A town. And if you go to any of our businesses in town, they get pounded probably weekly to support this activity, this club, this project, this, and adding another high school doubles that. I don't know if we have the community base or the business base to support that as well. And if we're looking long-term logistically, if we were to build a high school, let's theoretically build a high school right now over there, we would have a high school there, we'd have a high school here with a middle school on that same campus, and then a mile on the other side, another high school. So if we're really truly looking at long-term planning, it makes sense to do the middle school and create that, and then eventually build a high school so you have that aligned there and you're not. So a couple different answers, and yes, I understand there's different opinions and philosophies on that. Okay, you made it sound like it's going to be a lot harder than that.
I just have a question that has been asked on the stream.
All right.
So they just want to know, will Farnsworth plus the new middle school be able to absorb the current students, because it's a high school's worth of students to relocate?
Right, good question. So currently, if we take the whole population of our middle schools, we're roughly 1,600 students. If we were to build a new middle school, it houses about 1,100, and then adding on to Farnsworth would add capacity for 200 more students there. So that would give us capacity for 1,900 students. So yes, it would, with a little bit of growth built into that as well. So the hope is we don't build it and then start moving these modular classrooms over there immediately. We want a little bit of growth, and that's a challenge because we can't build for what we think may come. We have to build for what we have, but we can build a little bit of cushion into that. So, any other questions? Yes.
Just kind of along those lines, schools,
Wait for the mic so they can hear some. Yeah.
thank you, thank you. You can't save up for schools, right?
Right.
The only way is to bond.
Yeah.
Is that the state?
Yeah, that's, you either can bond or have a very generous donation. Really, that's the two options. There's not a funding revenue source for that other than bonding. That's the state revenue source for schools. Because yeah, we hear that a lot. Why don't we just save up and so we don't have to tap? We can't. Legally, we can't, and it takes a long time to save up.
And that bond money has to be spent.
Right, yes, so that bond money has to be spent on that bond. So these projects here, the $75 million, the only thing we can use that money for is for those projects in that ballot question. And we can't bond to increase teacher pay, we can't bond to, it's really a facilities capital projects is all you can use bond money for, and specifically for those in the question. So assuming both of these were to pass, we couldn't say, okay, we decided we want to build a bigger gym at Roberts, we're going to steal $3 million from the $75 million and put it out at Roberts. No, those are separate questions. So we have $5 million at Roberts, $75 million within those other projects. Now, within those other projects, if we came and the middle school cost, $61 million, we had $2 million left, we could say, okay, and we went over on the CTE center, that we could be fluid because they're in that same bond question, because they're under the same ballot. Does that make sense? All right. Yes, Mike.
Okay, this is just another one from online. How are these buildings being designed? These building prices seem outrageous. Are we looking at reasonable building designs to keep up or compete with schools around us without spending more than we have?
Right. No, that's a good question. And so the design process at this point, honestly, hasn't started a lot yet because it takes money to do that. We need to pass a bond first. But obviously, two things. We want to be fiscally responsible for sure. We want to make sure that we get a good building and that's going to last 50 to 100 years. But we want to do it in the most fiscally responsible way possible. But at the same time, when we say compete, I don't care about competing with other districts as far as what it looks like, but I do care about competing with opportunities for kids, because that's what we're about. And so yes, we want a building that meets the needs of kids. And so do we want to just go put up a building that's going to last 20 years and have a lot of maintenance? No, we want something that's going to be sound. But yes, we also want to be very responsible with how that's designed.
There's another one. I want to give everyone else here a chance first.
Is there any others here? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Why don't we collect from the developers who are building all the houses instead of taxing the residents?
That's a good question. Legally, we can't. districts are not allowed to collect impact fees, and so legally we can't do that. But, yes?
Okay, I'm still sort of trying to figure out how this all works, but 10 years,
So am I, to be honest, like,
10 years ago, when we bonded for all of this stuff, you couldn't have foreseen that we were going to have huge rate, huge,
Right.
whatever, growth, and like that the prices of our houses
Right.
were gonna jump so high.
right.
So what happens to all that money? Like, that's more than you were planning on. What happened to all of that?
Yeah, okay, good question. So, two things. One, you can collect up to 21 months of levy, put in your bond savings account so much. So that, you have that there. And also, we had the opportunity to take some of these bonds and, for lack of a better term, refinance them. So we paid off the South Fork bond a few years early.
Yes.
And then one of the Rigby High School bonds is already paid off, and we paid down, so we've refinanced them to save millions of dollars in taxpayer money by being able to do that as well. So you could put that money kind of in an account that's dedicated specifically for those bonds to pay those down, that saves millions of dollars on interest. Do you remember what was the number we saved in the millions?
So we've refunded 3 times, 2015, 2019, and then 2021 is a little bit different. It's putting money in an escrow, but all those together, we saved $5.5 million in interest on those bonds by paying them down early.
And that goes back to people, or how does that?
No, it goes back to paying the debt early.
Back to paying
So we would have more bonds on here still, and this number would be higher if we didn't do that. But now, with the change in philosophy to a set amount, we won't get that. We won't have the opportunity to that because we're collecting what we will need for those bonds, and as this taxable value goes up, this number is not going to go up. That's going to stay flat, so we're not going to collect more. But you could see that in your savings with your own property taxes, because that could go down if we have more people paying into that pot. Because it's not based on a percentage now, it's just a fixed amount. Does that help?
Sure.
I see in your eyes it might not.
Math wasn't my strong point.
So before, the variable was this line, and it went up very sharply the last few years. But now the variable is the rate, and the constant is the dollar amount, where before the constant was a variable, or the constant was the rate, and the variable was how much we took in. Now we know we're going to take in this much. We know that's what our payments are. We won't be taking any more than that. So I think Bryce mentioned that. The hard part of that is if in 5-10 years we have to do something, at that point we will have to raise taxes. We will have to come and say, okay, it will cost you $156 per 100,000 or whatever it is at that time. But because of that sharp increase in taxable value, it didn't make sense for that reason, like taking in way too much. Yeah, Carl.
But also on that, obviously in 10 years, if we have to, because we have more kids.
Exactly.
More people paying in, so it might level itself out and not have to raise taxes. So just because we have to build another high school in possibly 10 years, there's a reason for it.
Exactly.
Because we grow, the more people moving in, is that right?
Right, yeah. Yes.
Is there ever a point where the new system works against us rather than in our favor, where we have a set amount? Is there ever a circumstance where it wouldn't be in our favor?
Well, I think 2 times. 1, when we need to build again because we have to raise taxes. And 2, if we saw, well, I don't know if it works against us necessarily, but if we saw a decrease in values, then that would go up because we still have to get this amount here. So that would be the only thing. So yeah, if we all of a sudden got your tax assessments and they were down sharply, then yeah. I don't foresee that, but yeah. Yeah.
So last year's was about the 4.24, and I know we're not going off of a percentage now. We're going off of a flat income.
This year represents 3.27. If we would have kept the 4.24, we would have collected 12.5 million this year. But by dropping that, it's 7.5, but that's 3.27. So it's about $100 per.
With the bond, where would that be?
That is with the bond.
Like a 4.15 or something?
Same.
It's the same.
They're basically, you've got this piece of the pie that they're gonna collect regardless,
Correct.
and they're asking for your approval to spend a piece of the pie.
Right, so
That's basically what this bond is.
that's what this green is. So that fits under that 327. And so that's a piece of that. Does that answer?
They're gonna collect it.
No, I understand all of that. I just know that last year, this graph, similar graph, it really was at the 4.24 based on the current information. It's looking like this might be a little below that. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, is it like 4.15?
So it's 3.27.
It's gonna.
Isn't the gray at 3.27?
No, that's this here. That's everything is 3.27. Yeah,
So it's down.
yeah.
Our taxes are lower even if we pass the bond.
So our tax rate is lower. Now, we all know that our assessments went up roughly 40% last year, so the actual dollar amount is probably pretty similar because we lowered that, but at the same time, because of the increased taxable value. So I don't want to stand here and say, oh, your taxes are way down. No, that's not the case because of that taxable value. But if it was still at that 4.24, then yes, it would have gone up very sharply. Yeah. Did you have a question too, I thought?
I was curious, how many households are in D93 and how many properties are being taxed? Do you guys know those figures?
I don't have, do you have that? I don't have that. I know how many students we have, but yeah.
Not how many households?
I don't know exact number of households. I get a building permit update every month, but that's just new households. So yeah, existing, I'm not
Probably
sure.
come from the county.
Yeah. But yeah, that's something we could probably get from the county, but yeah.
We do receive from the county a singular, this number is the total taxable value of our
Right.
property. I actually have a report here in my book, so they show that by each county.
Right.
And so you just get that total dollar valuation of your county's properties.
Right, yeah, and we get that for the district, the total amount of the value, but not the number paying into that. Yes?
And I've heard rumors well, not rumors, I guess, there's been various proposals in the state legislature, how changes in how schools are funded.
Right.
How that.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I'm up on some of those in talking to legislators, and I don't foresee those gaining any traction soon. I'm glad they're talking about it. Now, there's some of those that may gain traction as far as funding salaries and things like that, but as far as funding buildings, I don't foresee that happening. If it does, it'll be a pleasant surprise. But even in talking to some that have proposed some of those things, this is kind of an introductory thing that, hopefully down the road. But is there a question? Did you have a question?
I did.
Okay. The mic reach over here.
I just got a text message saying that wasn't working.
Oh, is the mic not working, Michael?
It's working. You just have to wait until you get the mic to talk.
It might be that, yeah.
No, I just received a text that said that it wasn't going to be on YouTube or whatever.
No, that was on the other YouTube channel.
There are two different
Yeah.
YouTube channels.
Two channels.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, to start with, a minute ago, he spoke, I forget your name.
Bryce.
Bryce spoke about, we knocked off $100 of the bond money that we would pay
Right.
every year per thousand. But yet you say that it's going to raise it 156.
So, no, not necessarily. It's not going to raise it. That 156 is built into the existing.
I get the built-in, but if you only took off 100 and you add 156 to that, where does that?
So the 156 is after we took off 100. So if we would have kept it up there, this would have been way up here. So we dropped it to 7.5 million or the 3.27, and that 156 is part of that 3.27.
Okay, it's part of the 3.27.
Right.
Took it off. So then that's a less.
It was $427 per 100,000.
So the $56 is part of the top number.
No.
Went above the line.
No. So we dropped it down here to collect the 7.5 million, and that that equals a $327. That 156 is in here already. So we dropped it before we added the 156.
So it dropped way more than the $100 you spoke of.
It would have if you didn't add the 156 back in. Does that make sense? It would have dropped to 100 and I don't know what.
So we did have another bond in here that went up to here for South Fork. So I think what you're saying is if we didn't have this proposed bond, we'd have probably been here. But then when we drop down here, we have this space to add room. There's room for another bond, and that's what we're kind of replacing. It's a little more than the South Fork bond, of course, but that 156 is an average, and how we do that is by making small payments until all the other bonds drop off, and then we make large payments.
Okay, so the 156 is an average.
Is an average over that 20 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes a little more sense. I was like 100 and 156.
Yeah, right.
You're leaving money on the table
yeah.
here. Where's that going?
Yeah.
Second off, are the same contractors proposed to do this work?
So yes, when we went to this through the process last year, yes, we would maintain the same contractors to do that.
Okay, so the same contractors are going to do a job that they were going to do last year for $2 million, and this year it's going to cost $5 million?
So
That's 250%.
So which one was $2 million?
Roberts Elementary.
So part of that was when we went into Roberts, we realized that by adding the gym, we also had to add bathrooms and other stuff as well. So our initial proposal was just adding a gym, but when looking at zoning and codes, they said, no, you're going to have to add bathrooms and stuff as well. And so that added it, plus the increase in price.
I think it'd be a really good example of what we did over at Harwood and so forth. So more than just a gym, we completely redid offices, we did the outside of the building.
Right.
Again, Robert's our oldest building, then we saw more of a need, talked to them, and so this is more than just a simple gym addition. It's more
Right.
like we did at Harwood.
So instead of just the gymnasium, it's going to be office, more classrooms, more bathrooms.
Not more classrooms, and yeah, it will be updates to the building. Like some of that are probably things you can't even see, like the HVAC and things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, and that wasn't included last year.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
getting 250%.
Right, yeah, no, yeah, things have gone up, but yeah, but not that much. But yeah, when we dug in, we realized there's some other things that need to be done there, and then adding the bathrooms when we looked at code and different things we had to add.
Okay, so my numbers are coming up pretty much the same. That was a real easy one.
Right.
Where did the $3 million go on that one? Last year, Farnsworth, the add-on was going to be about $7 million, I think.
Yeah.
It's about the same. So why is the middle school so much higher this bond versus last bond?
What was the number we ended up with last bond?
Thought it was $7 million,
yeah,
but
no, for the middle school. So the middle school, one thing we looked at when we were looking before, we were looking at adding about 1,000 kids, middle school. But we thought, you know what, looking at numbers growth, we need to add it. So this one would house 1,100 to 1,200 kids. So in each pod, there would be an extra classroom. And so it's adding square footage. So that's why the middle school went up more.
Okay, so, and the Farnsworth is housing less children now? I say housing, I don't know.
Less than?
I thought last year it was supposed to up the volume of that school 400 kids.
At Farnsworth?
At Farnsworth, is what I'm pretty sure I read.
Well, it's 8 classrooms, and that's what it was before. And we figure about 25 per classroom. So that's about
200.
Yeah, 200.
Okay, so you've added on to the middle school then?
Right, yeah, we'll add capacity to the middle school as well.
So it's not the same middle school that we voted on last time?
As far as floor plan and stuff, no. Like, we don't have a floor plan for it, but we know we need to add a little bit of square footage to it.
Expanded.
Potentially so, yeah.
You probably should have said that in the beginning, because you said we was same thing for the middle school, same thing for Farnsworth.
Well, it's the same project, the middle school. We never had a floor plan for any of it. We had some concepts out there.
House or so many children were going to come to the school. And then that number it increased by a lot, because this is more than the bond was last year.
Same as the bond last year.
It was 63 million, the whole bond?
The whole bond was 80 million.
80 million.
Yeah.
So it was still 63 million?
The middle school?
Yeah, so that price went up, I'm sure.
What's that?
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah.
Okay, so that makes it a little bit more desirable.
Right.
Is you're getting a bigger school for a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking inflation. I was like, look, man, I know things went up, but
Right.
not that much. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes. Yes, right here.
If I could say this right. Earlier you were explaining, and I want to make sure I understood this right, like in a normal business setting, we would go get our plans, then we would submit that to contractors. We are prohibited by...
So the process, actually Bryce could probably explain this better than I can. Do you want to take that one on the process of?
We have to have the money before we can have
So
any of that done.
one of the ways that we can do that is by doing a CMGC. And so what happens for that is we don't have the money to go out, do the designs, which we need to do bids. And so with this way, what we do is we go to the general contractor, we get a kind of a visualized what we're going to do, what the project is. He will kind of give us, going to his subs and going out and getting an estimate of what that's going to cost. That's what we have here, is kind of an estimate. So going forward, what they'll do is if a bond passes, you go forward, they'll go out, they'll do the bids, get the bid opening, and then they'll come back and say, this is our max price. This is what we'll build this building for. So that's the process that we have chosen.
I understand that, Lori. So just so I understand correctly, we're not allowed to do this the way that, say, a traditional business, if I was going to go to build a business, I'd go get somebody to draw plans, I'd go get to my contractors and get a bid. We have to pass the bond first before we can do that?
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Before we can get bids, you have to have plans, which is very, very expensive for a school.
Right.
So it's very risky to say, okay, we're going to put up $500,000, $1 million, whatever, to draw up plans that they can do bids off of if we haven't passed a bond yet.
Gotcha.
And so that's the exposure that we have, yeah.
Gotcha.
And the process for selecting those is we put out an RFQ, request for qualifications, and we have contractors and architects submit those. We have rubric we go through, and then we select the top 2, 3, 4, however many. We interview them, have them come in, and then we select from there. Then, if we come back at that, we get that maximum price and it doesn't fit within then at that point we can go back to drawing board if we had to as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the contractors who give you these rough estimates so that you know what to bond for, are you committed to having them build the building after the bond passes? Or can you, who's allowed to bid on these? So it seems like it's always the same 3 guys and they're making a killing because there's no competition.
Well, there's really only about 3 guys in the valley that do it. But they put it all out to bid to all the subcontractors. And then we, by law, have to take the lowest bid unless there's some reason we've never had that before, that there's legal issues or something with them. So yeah, and then with the contractors, there's a percentage there that you negotiate on that. And so they had their subs, we have to go with the lowest bid. And so that portion of it, and we get multiple bids. So we do go through the bidding process, just not the process. It's a different process for the contractor. But as far as bidding out all of the work, yes, that happens, and we have to go with the lowest bid.
So what happens if, lumber prices are dropping, it's been a crazy few years, what if we bond for this amount? Lumber drops, everything drops, and we
can build it for less.
How are you keeping those builders honest, because they know what we've bonded for, so they can be like, oh yeah, it's still going to be.
Well, that's back to the bidding process. Yeah, that's back to the bidding process, and it's a competitive bid for all the subcontractors.
Okay.
And so, like say, they've gone, okay, we built similar schools with square footage, more or less based on a square footage cost. This is what it will cost. And then, but as far as the going out to the metal companies, the HVAC, all of that, then that's a competitive bidding process. And some of those trades, you'll have 10 or 12 bids, and you go with the lowest one. And so it just depends on at that time, the environment of the process.
Okay, well, let's switch.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Our question now. We're a 5A school, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't get bigger than that in the state of Idaho.
Not yet,
correct?
no.
So compared to other schools in the state of Idaho, where are we? Like, are we one of the biggest?
We're the biggest outside of the Boise Valley. I think there's 3 or 4 bigger, yeah. Mr. Peterson?
According to the rankings right now, we're number 8 in the state. We've actually passed a couple of Boise schools and stuff.
Right. And I think we are the biggest outside of the Boise Valley,
We're
is
the
that right?
biggest outside of the-
Yeah, yeah. So compared around here, yes, we're very big. Compared to Boise Valley, we're right there with them, yeah.
If we built another high school, would the two high schools still be considered 5A?
No.
It depends on how we split it. We may have one of, yeah. Because the 5A cutoff is 1240, 1280, and if we have 2100, they would both drop down to 4A if they were
So
split.
within a few years, we'd probably be up to 5A for both schools?
Potentially. I mean, if you saw that growth, if you, 2100, you would have roughly 1,000, 1,100. So you would have, 150 in each, so 300 student growth before you hit that in both of them. But yeah, they would still be, bigger schools.
Okay, so the question, there's two. One is, what kind of security plans are being thought about with the construction of the new middle school, and just, does this bond include any security for additional buildings we already have?
Right. So as far as security, yes, when we get with the designers, that's going to be part of that process, obviously. And so we'll build that in. As far as, no, this doesn't include any for the existing schools within this bond. Obviously, we're doing things, but it's outside of the realm of this bond.
And then the other question was, many companies offer free bids, so why does it cost $500 to $1 million to get a bid for a school?
Well, it's developing the plans to get a bid off of that's the expensive part. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, those contractors that give bids, they do that. That they don't, we don't pay them to give bids, but we have to have detailed drawings and plans to do that. And it's the architect fees that you have to have beforehand to be able to get those bids.
Are we using a plan that's already been used before? Like, are we using like Black Canyon Middle School's plan?
Yeah, most likely. The contractor actually built Black Canyon, so it could be similar to that with modifications that meet our needs. There's some things they did at Black Canyon that we don't necessarily think that fits us, but yeah, basic floor plan, and that's kind of the model that we went off of, so, yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Did I understand you correct, that we've already decided who the general contractor is, but the subs are bid?
Right. Yeah, so the general contractor, but the subs, we have no idea until we pass a bond. They put those out there, the subs bid, and then we have it's kind of an interesting process. They all come in and you have sealed bids and we open them up and read what they have, and some of them leave happy and some leave sad, so yeah.
So does that, does the amount we contract with the general change according to those bids, or do we just add more stuff in since we find lower bids with subs?
No, I mean, so let's take Cottonwood, for example. We ended up under budget, do you remember?
Over $1 million.
Yeah, over $1 million under budget there. And so there were savings there. It's not like we said, okay, we have $1 million, let's try to spend that. And so with that, the question is, what do you do with that money? And so we were under $1 million, but actually we ended up with a lot more than that because we had interest on that money that we gained. And so that, again, like we said, that can only go to Cottonwood, well, and that's Cottonwood, Harwood, or Midway, where those projects were. And so you can do a couple of things. One, you could put that back into your bond account. Or two, you can go back to the voters and say, we have this money sitting here. Can we reallocate it for this project? And which we still do have some money left from Cottonwood in that account. And it could be that we go back to voters and say, okay, we have this money. We'd like to do a little bit more at the CTE. Can we reallocate it for that?
Okay.
Yes.
That's how this building was built, correct?
That was before my time. Yes. Yes.
But I don't remember that going to a vote. Was it because it was a small percentage?
I don't know. Do the board members that have been here, do you know on that one?
It was built within the framework of that bond.
It was built into the bond.
Oh, it was built into the bond.
Okay, it's obvious I am for a new high school. If we are going to have to build a high school within 10 years anyway, and we split the high schools for 4A, and as I look at the live chat, a lot of people are saying, why aren't we doing a high school when we don't need it? And you're saying that the community wouldn't vote for it. But from what I'm hearing, a lot of people are interested in a new high school, not putting so many kids in a big school, letting teachers be cohesive, letting students feel like they're important and that they're valued because they have a principal that's not over 2,000 students, but that's over only 1,000. And then, yes, our taxes would raise, and it would overdo the bond, but it's going to go up anyway.
At some point, yeah. And personally, me, I'm not opposed to a new high school. Like, I'm not opposed to that. But the feedback, and remember, you have to get supermajority. So, just because some people say that, you have to get 66 2/3 to do that. And so it's important that you keep that in mind. But as far as that, if you have a 1,000 student high school, you have 2 principals. We have 4 principals at that high school. So it's not quite as, that direct correlation as well, that you have that, the administrator or counselor, or the rate is the same regardless of if you have 1 high school or 2 high schools, you're going to split that. And so rather than having, 4 counselors at the high school, you'll have 2 at each, and so they'll have the same number of students. So, but yeah, I don't think that we're saying.
Are you going to vote?
That's what we're doing.
A preliminary vote for a new high school?
We did send surveys out, I think it was before the last bond. Monica, I think you sent those out. And yeah, those. And after, and that's guided that discussion that way. That's what we used for some of that data. Yes?
Has it changed? I thought that 80 million was the max that we were allowed to vote on. Has that changed now?
So it was just over 80, but yes, that has changed because, so we're allowed to have indebtedness, if that's the right word, of up to 5% of the total market value or total taxable value of our district. Now with that taxable value going up, yeah, now that cap is raised. I don't know what that's at now.
130, 140.
Yeah, so over 100 million, 120, 130 million, but that means that this bar goes up too if you do that, and so we would be raising that. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was one of the reasons to begin with, and that's why we sent those surveys out to say, okay, do we consider that now? And that was a big talking point with the board. It's not like we just put that aside. Yeah. Yes.
So basically what you're saying is, just so I'm clear, basically what you're saying is, yes, we could potentially bond for more for a new high school because we have the capacity.
Right.
However, it will raise our taxes.
Right.
So if you have people who are wanting a new high school within the next, 5 years, then you can vote for that, but we're going to have to raise our taxes.
Right, you could. You'd have to get supermajority to do that. But yeah.
But it would, by having the higher bond for a school,
right.
A high school, your taxes are going to be raised.
Right, yeah.
You go first.
Getting your steps in.
I lost it. I started thinking about what she said and I lost it.
We got one more back there. We'll come to you, Michael. Back in the far corner.
So what have you looked at as far as traffic concerns, putting that middle school, is that built in to the cost of that school?
So yeah, anytime we build a new school, so the question was, what about traffic concerns? Anytime we build a new school, we have to do a traffic study, and we'd work with, depending on if it's ITD or the county. So Cottonwood, we had to expand the roads, put turning lanes in a couple different places, widen intersections. So that's part of it. I know obviously there's concerns on 48, traffic there. In some aspects, I think it will relieve some of that because all those coming from the south won't be coming to 48. They would be coming just to that property there, just a mile south of that. But yeah, we would definitely do a traffic study. That would be part of that.
And the cost of anything that might be incurred would be built into this?
Yeah, and there's contingencies built into this for those types of things. Yeah. All right, Mr. Feek.
Is there a concern with this low bid process that you'll get people extremely underballing the price and then we don't get a quality building for what we want?
Right. So anyone that bids has to have the, what's it called, Public Works license. So they have to go through a vetting process. And the the specs that sent out are very clear, down to even in some cases what brand of things they can use. And so, but yeah, you do lose a little bit of control there. But through that process of becoming licensed for public works, there is some vetting that goes on there. Anything else?
I remember really well.
Get in the mic, hurry, hurry.
Okay, so I know this is not here, but the contingency plan for what happens if this does not pass,
Right.
is there one? Because this growth is like, it has to stop now, and we got to have room for kids, and that's the whole thing for now.
Right.
So is there a contingency plan? Because I know District 91 had one, and they've already put it in effect, and they're taking care of things without a bond.
Right.
So,
Well, I would say they're band-aiding things. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
And no offense, but
Right.
if we're going to have to build a new school within 5 to 10 years, possibly,
Right.
we're Band-Aiding things. We keep Band-Aiding it to get a few more years out.
Whatever we do is a Band-Aid, because we can't build for what we think we're going to have. We can't do that. And so, right.
That's correct. So it's
Right.
always a Band-Aid.
Yeah, we're always building, keep up. You know, we built Cottonwood in 18, we built the high school in 14. As we continue to grow, there's always going to be things. So our task, I guess, is what's the best next step. And through meeting with the community, with the board, we figured this is our best next step.
Okay.
But yeah, is it a 20-year fix? No, it's not. Well, I shouldn't say that. If growth continues, it's not. But nothing is if growth continues, you know, at 3 to 6%.
I mean,
Right.
your house is only so big, so you can only let so many people stay with you before it's full. I
Right,
understand.
yeah. That's the advantage of a smaller house, yeah.
I mean, that's the way normal people would see it.
Right.
And I understand the schools are only so big, but there has to be something in plan. I just want to make sure that's the thing, because you're betting on a lot of people voting on
Right.
this now.
Yeah, and so again, we're minimum 2 years out. Well, really 3 years from the high school once we do that. So we know that next year at the high school, we're going to gain over 100 students because we have a bigger freshman class coming in than a senior class leaving. After that, that number levels out some, but that doesn't account for any growth. And so there might be a little bit of breathing room there, you know, for some growth as those other classes come in. But we've also seen some classes gain 30 to 40 kids a year, you know, just to pay. It's weird how that works, you know. So yeah, it's just, I mean, I wish I could say, yep, in 5 years we're going to need this, 10 years we're going to need this, or let's do this right now and it's going to fix it, but that's just not the case.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, we lit a fire.
One question. I realize the CTE Center is a great benefit, and it is not that expensive if you look at compared to
The whole thing, yeah.
But why not just leave the middle school as it is, maybe do updates that are needed, because it wouldn't be as much, save more tax money, and just leave it as it is, and you can bring the high school over there, or better yet, just leave the 9th grade over in the old high school. Since you said a new 9th grade is coming in, that's 100 kids more, just put the 9th grade in there and leave 10th, 11th, and 12th at the high schools. Either of those options, you know.
Then what would you do with the middle school kids that are in there?
You wouldn't build the middle
Oh.
school. I'm just saying that it would save a little bit money instead of reconfiguring half of the middle school to be a CTE center, because it's going to cost quite a bit
Yeah.
to make the changes.
Yeah, and that could be a possibility to do that and not do the CT Center, but we see a bigger bang for the buck to create that and create those opportunities for kids. And so, and ultimately, like, everybody in this room has ideas, and everybody on the live stream and everybody in the district has ideas, and they're probably all a little different, but we have to come together at some point with a plan that works. And so I can guarantee you whatever the plan is, everybody's going to think, oh, we should have done this a little different, or we should have done that a little different. And but the reality is, as a community, we have to come together and find something that works for both the community and the district. And so, I mean, I appreciate all the input, but really the board has spent hours and hours and hours working over this and going over these same scenarios and come to this. And so, yeah, I agree, that could be something. You could save $5 million and not have the CTE Center.
Okay, and it's inevitable that eventually we're going to need a high school, whether whether it's 10 years down the road
Well,
or sooner.
depends on the growth, yeah.
But
I was just going to answer. So it boils down to that. It's a mathematical equation. If we don't have growth and our district stays where it's at, guess what? We're there. So to say that we have to have a high school, that we're going to have a high school, we're going to have it 7 years or 12 years, one thing drives that.
Yeah.
And so that's the difficulty that we're put in as the board, is that crystal ball. Now, all we can look at and know for some form of our numbers is what's it done the last 10 years, what's it last done. So we, as a board, have looked out 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, that's our job. But if we have no growth, and then to say that, so my opinion, and this is just my opinion is this Rigby will be a 2 high school town someday, but predicated on one word: growth.
Yes.
I just want to talk about the CTE Center. We have to realize that not every kid here will go to college, and there's a lot of kids that will benefit from that. And as a board, we can't just look at the kids that will go to college someday. We have to look at all of them. So the CTE is a huge benefit, especially in our farming community and the different things that are offered for kids that they're not going to take the normal path to college, and they're going to need to have a different route. And some of those kids, we went and visited them in Boise, and those kids are already working in high school and bringing in a good wage because of what they've been offered over there. And so I'm hoping people look at that CTE as a huge benefit for our community. It's not just something that we decided, oh, we got to put some kids in there. It'll be a huge benefit for the students here, and we're sent here to make sure that all students have an opportunity to succeed. And so I hope people will see that through the CTE.
Thank you. Yes, Randall.
My son now works at O'Reilly's, and he loves cars. He's always loved cars. But due to the size of automotive classes Rigby High School could offer, because of how big the school was and how many kids wanted in it, he wasn't able to do high school automotives. And so the CTE Center, with more opportunity, if they need 2 automotive teachers at the CTE Center, they have room. It will give kids an opportunity who might not have made automotive because their grades weren't good enough to get into the automotive program at Rigby High School because it wasn't big enough and we didn't have enough teachers. And so I also support the CTE program in that it will give kids that aren't going to college an opportunity to get into the classes, even if maybe they're not the best student, because they will have a larger program there. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So why aren't we utilizing CEI more that we're already paying the taxes for that very thing?
We are. I don't know how many credits, I'd have to talk to the high school principal, but our kids are utilizing that very extensively. We get a lot of credits from CEI. We have kids graduating with associate's degree from there. We are, but logistically, they don't have the room, and getting to and from during the day just doesn't work. But yeah, we would work very closely with them, and we do with our CT programs we have now. Oh, we have one in the back.
So personally, me as a student, I think the CTE was a myth.
What's that?
That's what it's called, the CTE.
Yep, CT, Career Technical Education.
So I think that would be great because me personally, I want to go into medical, and so being able to get all those credits while I'm in high school it'd be great. Because then that cuts down less time I have to go to college, and like I can start like working sooner. So me personally, I think that would be great.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah.
There's a couple, I'll just lump them into one question, you can just answer all of them. The first one, is there a concern with the time it would take students to get from the CTE school to the high school? Would they have enough time during passing time to do that? And then is there a concern about staffing both schools with the limited teacher shortage that we're seeing around the country? Is that a concern? And then in the future, would both high schools be able to benefit from the CTE program, or is it just for Rigby?
Right, no, great questions. You might have to remind me of all of them, but the first one, as far as location, we're doing that now. We have 17 classrooms in modular units that are out right by the middle school, so it's not a lot different, but by scheduling to where a student could spend half a day there, rather than just go for one class at a time, then that would cut down on that. As far as staffing, it doesn't change. We're going to have X amount of students and we need X amount of teachers. So as far as that, that doesn't change. What may be a little difficult as we add new programs is finding those specialties, but that's reality what we need to do for kids. And so we're doing that. I don't want to send the message that we don't have a CTE program. We have one of the most amazing CTE programs in the state. Like, it's amazing, but we need to expand not only our existing programs, but add to that, so we're meeting the needs of more students and more kids. You've probably seen in the news, Idaho Falls School District, they just created a CTE school. You ought to go take a look sometime. It's in the old Desert Industries building, and it's fascinating. We went and visited that, and what they've done there is amazing. Kids are going there, and you walk into the room, and it's like a hospital room, and that's where you take your nursing classes, and that's how it's set up. It's a real-world scenario. There was one more there.
Yeah, Kim, the other high school.
Oh, yes, definitely. And that's one of the benefits that I see of doing that now, because then at the end, whenever that is, 10 years, 15 years, when we have two high schools, we also have a CTE center to benefit both of those high schools. And so again, by scheduling to where it's not just you're going there to take one class, but other classes there, you can spend half a day there. And truly, a lot of these students, when they get to their senior year, most of their time is spent in that area, in those capstone classes. Yeah. Yes?
So we already have some CTE courses established at the high school. So moving all of the programs from that are CTE at the high school now over to the middle school now, wouldn't that also alleviate classroom sizes and restrictions at the high school that we're experiencing, because they can move into those other rooms and stuff that are currently using for CTE?
Yeah, and I don't know as we would move all of them over, because it doesn't make sense to recreate. We have some great facilities there. We have an auto shop there. We have some great facilities. So to recreate those would, but some of those we will move, those that do need to expand, and some we'll keep there, and it could be we add some of both. But yeah, we'll be strategic about that. But yeah, it'll definitely free up space within the main building as well as we move some of those out. Yeah, good question. Any more? Okay. Well, thank you so. Yeah,
Can I
maybe.
make a comment?
You can say whatever. Well,
probably
make it appropriate.
My husband said I'm not kidding. I can restrain myself. And if I'm out of line, somebody can tell me, but I just want to, I'm a substitute teacher in our district, and the only school I haven't been in this year is the alternative high school. I just want to tell anybody who thinks that this need isn't real, just go volunteer, go visit in between classes at the middle school. The halls those teachers are doing a fantastic job. The principal, the staff, I mean, I cannot tell you how much I admire what they're doing, but those halls, you're worried about safety and stuff. They are like a New York City street at rush hour, at the sidewalk. It is so crowded, and for folks that think that we're not going to have to do something, we have to do something. I'm in every single school. I sub at Roberts. If you think we don't need a gym out there, go visit. Quit just saying what you knew or what somebody else said. I'm not saying anybody in here did, but you need to go visit those yourself. To add additional bathrooms, my gosh, I just thought about the only 2 bathrooms we get to use when I'm out there with all of those kids, and they are doing a fantastic job with what they have. Something has to be done. This isn't gonna, and also the thing that so many online especially say, you know, we're a 5A school in a 2A town. We are not, we are called Rigby High School, but we're really the high school for this entire, you know, for a large area. We have a lot who come from out of Rigby city limits, and that's just a misnomer. That's just not factual. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. And I don't know if I'm out of line encouraging you, go visit. If your tendency is to vote no, we can't afford it, we don't need it, go visit these schools, and if you still feel like that's true, that's your whatever, but go check it out for yourself. The difference, I was in Harwood yesterday, the difference in that school, other than it's a maze for those of us whose kids went to school there and I can't find my way around, phenomenal difference that's made for that school. So, anyway, that's
Thank you.
my
Oh, thank you. Okay, any other comments, questions? Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you coming out and giving input and listening, and our door is always open. If you have questions, Bryce, myself, we're always happy to sit down with you to go over anything. We want information to get out there. And so if you love this meeting, there's another one at 7. And so, but we appreciate those that took time online, and I'd like to give an example of our CTE programs is here with our broadcasting class. So let's give them a hand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.